Right, we're bang on time, Ben. Will I admit everybody and off we go?
Yeah, I think so, Dennis.
All right, here we go.
Thank you everyone for joining today and making the time in your schedules. It's a pleasure to have you all with us. We welcome existing and future customers and of course, guests from our partner network. We also send our best to those who will be watching this recording afterwards. I'm Ben Black, Director of Sales. I help to support our customers and partners alike throughout Europe, and I'm based in the UK. Our ambition for the next 45 minutes is to provide real-world experience and attempt to answer any questions you may have. There are more success factors in route to market digitization than we could hope to cover on this call, and every project is of course different. However, today we share an overview of our collective experience across projects in CPG, automotive and aerospace, plus many other manufacturing and distribution business models. I'm joined by my experienced colleague, Denis Clifford, who will guide us through some real-world examples in respect to route to market digitization.
Hi, everybody. Welcome as well from me. I'm Denis Clifford, for those who I don't know, or more importantly, those who don't know me. I'm the Chief Customer Officer at Virto Commerce. I was just reflecting on this webinar and the title of it, and I realized with some degree of embarrassment, actually, that it's almost 2 decades now I've been involved in various transformation projects, not all of them digital, in fairness. Firstly, in more sort of analog ways, pre-e-commerce explosions around contact centers and outsourced projects. But latterly in the drinks industry, and I was very much focused on e-commerce and digital transformation there. But throughout my career, it's all been about route to market, about being involved in commerce and business strategy and customer centricity. So I'm delighted so many customers, partners, new and existing, and a few prospective customers are with us here today too. A couple of pieces of housekeeping, if that's okay. The mics are closed, so unfortunately we can't hear you. We also can't see you as much as we'd love to. But there is a Q&A button at the top of the webinar, and if you have a little click there and you have any questions during the course of the event, we'd absolutely love to hear from you. So we already have a couple of questions in advance that a few people have asked us to cover topics. We'll try and do that, I think, Ben, towards the end of the session. We have 3 or 4 topics that we want to cover. But if you have any questions, please do put them in Q&A. Okay. I should mention as well, the webinar is being recorded for those who might want to watch it back too.
Thanks, Dennis. So firstly, just a little about Virto Commerce, what makes us different and why are we qualified. Our technology is fully composable, adaptable and extensible. In short, as your business evolves, Virto can adapt without restriction, and it can do so quickly and cost effectively. As a result, our technology is readily identified as a market leader by technical audiences, particularly when contrasted against less agile SaaS or monolithic platforms. However, of course, a few collective decades later, we have naturally built a depth and breadth of commercial experience and expertise. We see our technology as the enabler of our clients' continued commercial success, but by sharing our insight, we can help you to provide superior customer experience and sustainable competitive advantage. We have a strong partner network across the world, plus an in-house implementation team who are ready to support your success from MVP and beyond. And I conclude, we are best known for empowering and digitizing B2B routes to market for some of the world's leading brands, and chosen by business leaders due to our future-proofed and cost-effective solution. Just in terms of core products, we have our primary B2B e-commerce platform, ideal for B2B sales channels and self-service portals, given its capability of resolving complex business models, offering rich personalizations, permissions, budgets, authorization, access-based pricing, and caters for multi-location considerations. Our primary platform is often chosen by large enterprises who have hit a technical ceiling elsewhere, but more on that later. Virto Start, our mid-market solution, really the same product with a different approach to implementation through enriched out-of-the-box functionality. One might say activation and integration with often some customization, of course, but in favor of heavy bespoke blank page development. Virto Start provides a recommended and proven fast and lower cost MVP deployment with a sensible future roadmap as your business and budget grows. And Virto Marketplace, our more recent multi-vendor platform, now recommended by Microsoft and recently featured in the McFadden Marketplace Sweet Spot report. Now, there are possibilities here, but our recommended approach in our PaaS, platform as a service, our solution would be hosted by Virto in our Microsoft Azure environment, somewhat locally to you.
Thanks, Ben. So, on to what we believe, at least, are the key success factors in route to market digitization. The list is nowhere near exhaustive, and we could probably go on and identify another 10 on top of the 10 you see in front of you. Every route to market digitization project is very different. We will linger on some of these a little bit longer than some others, but in the next 30 minutes or so, we would expect to speak about these particular topics here. Worth to bear in mind that just because it has digital before it, transformation is still transformation, whether it's digital or not. And you know, a good project management, program management practice is still the same regardless. So having digital in front of things, it shouldn't really mystify, and it isn't the kind of thing that you should be concerned about. So today, what we're going to talk about are, first of all, thinking big, starting small, and scaling fast, and how that's the best initial approach to your route to market project. We'll talk about how most of the effort in what might appear to be a technology project is actually not technical at all. And Ben and I say that in the knowledge we're working for a technology company, right? We believe as well, we'll talk about this, how the route to market digitization projects, they need to be driven out from the overall business strategy of the company. So those of you on the call who are IT professionals will be delighted. We'll be putting our business colleagues under pressure if we do that. We'll also talk about how the business case is much more than about just saving costs. We'll also talk about how if you create an essential business tool, that's really the way to get adoption and to drive that stickiness that you really want with customers. Not all technology is created equally, and yes, the best technology can create a competitive advantage for sure. And we'll talk about how digital routes to market are fantastic places to try out new business models and do some experimentation. It's important to simplify before you digitize, and we'll spend a bit of time on that. And also the importance of understanding what are the wins and the losses for everybody involved in something like this. Finally, we'll mention around solid foundations and what are the basic building blocks you need to have in place before you consider a route to market project, which involves digital technology. Okay, time is tight, so we're going to move on as quick as we can. So first of all, on to think big, starting small and scaling fast. By all means, anybody considering a major transformation project in the route to market should have strong ambitions. But equally, companies doing that shouldn't consider that they will be able to do everything and to do everything perfectly right from the beginning. In fact, our view is that it's preferable to do things fast and in smaller chunks, because you will learn so much about you, about your business, and about your customers in the early phases. So some key questions and things to consider are definitely around the level of disruption that you think that you could achieve. It could be confined, you know, rather than just migrating business from offline to online, really consider how there are new markets, potential new customers, new opportunities, new ways of doing business, so that you're actually thinking about it as disruptive rather than it being a housekeeping project, if you know what I mean. Also important to consider the project scope. So figure out what is, you know, we all talk about minimal viable product. We've started to talk about minimal lovable products now, but it's not a case of what you should do, it's what you can't do, and what is a viable small chunk in order to take that out to the market and really prove what you're trying to do. Good to consider what customers now and into the future. By that I mean not just your existing customer base, but think about where are the new customer bases you could go after. And in terms of performance, there will be some levers and indicators in your KPIs that will tell you when to go big. So in other words, we've now proven the concept. This can now be a full-scale, business-wide transformation project. And our advice is, whatever you do, follow the value. Don't always follow the next cool feature. And as I said at the top, doing it fast is preferable to doing it right. And we strongly believe that perfect is the enemy of good, for sure. Also worth considering that your speed to market, the timelines you have, can be matched by any third-party service provider that you're working with, and that they're as willing, able, and agile as you are. As Ben said, you know, we in our own business, when we're talking to potential clients, we talk about this by way of a digital evolution curve, so that you can start fast with an entry-level B2B solution, if it is, you know, e-commerce digital transformation we're talking about, that you can build that up then as customers start to look for, you know, better and more experiences, and finally you can go and disrupt the business with your own marketplace or a further solution. So what we're talking about, we very much believe, and we implement ourselves in terms of our products.
So what that looks like from a technology perspective, this high-level architecture slide is a good starting point. As you can see, we recommend and follow MAC principles, being modularity, allowing you to choose and install which service models are required, and there are more than 60 with Virto now, or indeed you can create a new one. You can also migrate gradually and retain functionality from other systems that you wish to keep. Being API first, it enables you to connect with a omni-channel touchpoints via multiple storefronts or marketplaces. And of course, it allows you to follow a best of breed approach, connecting with other applications that are the very best in the small thing that they do. With REST API integration, it allows you to connect with middleware to solve real-time information challenges, often apparent with ERP and PIM systems. And of course, being cloud native, performance, availability, security, and GDPR is also covered. In terms of scalability then, new functionality is not written from scratch, but constructed from pre-existing cells and molecules, as we can see here. We refer to this as atomic architecture, commonly otherwise referred to as a microservices style approach. Our construction of end features is ultimately delivered by smaller independent elements, providing infinite adaptability and allowing you to do so in small, modular and incremental ways. Denis, anything further you would like to add on this in particular? I know we can speak for a long time on this slide, and I'm keen not to go too far, but you may have a couple of points.
Sure, and very conscious, by the way, that I'm not the technical guy at Virto Commerce, and I know there are people on this call who are far more technically minded than I. But I suppose that the reason we share this is because in the context of starting small and scaling fast, the reason we show this is because, as Ben said, you don't necessarily have to create a new code or break your existing code to do something innovative within the Virto Commerce architecture, because it is already constructed itself of smaller pieces of code and features that we've been working on for quite some time. So, you know, appreciating fully that you're at a Virto Commerce webinar, and of course we want to talk about our own product, but this is, you know, something that, as Ben said, the MAC principles apply to, so that it's modular. It's something that is constructed out of other smaller building blocks, which enables you to move fast. And that is let's say a more modern and common now approach to how to do digital transformation than has been the case in the past, maybe with what we call, you know, large monolithic solutions. These are the ones that try to be an ERP and a CRM and a PIM system and e-commerce, and they wake you up in the morning with a cup of coffee, etc. So that's why we bring that topic up. Thanks, Ben. So that was thinking big, starting small and scaling fast. We want to talk a little bit now about how actually most of the effort in these types of projects are on non-technical tasks. In fact, we would say, and again, as the software vendor, that non-technical tasks are almost as important, and often more so, to the overall success of a project than the actual technical ones. We have some of the best technical and delivery people in the business. I firmly believe that, and we can certainly add value, but also increasingly we are finding ourselves in conversations much more about business strategy, about where our customers and our partners want to take their customer businesses. So we think that's hugely important. So based on our collective experience, and indeed personally, I think it could be even higher, the non-technical effort in terms of hours and complexity, and yes, of course, it's absolutely subjective, we reckon is about 60%. And so with that in mind, how we deliver the e-commerce solution is only part of any route to market digitization. The remainder will be with our customers and potentially with our partners to deliver. And increasingly, our partners as well find themselves in conversations, not just about the technology, but actually how to implement it. And it's true for many big businesses. So Nike, for example, they have been taking steps recently to grow their direct to consumer business. And that's all about responding to consumer demand. But they know that that move is much more than just implementing technology. It actually creates a lasting change in the company's values. So it's all about branding strategy, it's about supply chain and much, much more. So in the case of Nike, I believe, the digitization is all about the customer approach and the company values more than it even is about the technology. So the types of topics that come up frequently are things like commercial strategy, governance, reporting, value tracking, new roles and responsibilities, new organizations to run e-commerce and so on. And all of those, the technology piece is heavily dependent on all of those to be successful. So in our view, 60% of the effort is actually non-technical, and that's an important success factor in any route to market project. Number 3, and this is definitely one for the Star Wars fans who might be in the webinar, and I'm a big Star Wars fan, as Ben knows. Not the new stuff so much as the original trilogy, right? The newer ones are okay, but the ones in the middle from the 90s, definitely not my cup of tea. But I want to just explain that there's a big kind of preamble or context to this one. In the 70s, the late 70s, when George Lucas was writing Star Wars, directing it and filming it, he realized very on in the process that actually the special effects, the visual effects, which were groundbreaking at the time, was something that he could not do whilst also concentrating on, the story, the script, and actually bringing the vision to life. He actually needed somebody who could effectively bring the magic, and he created and spun out an entirely different business called Industrial Light and Magic, who are still around today. They do video games, they do special effects for plenty of movies, etc. But the key thing being that he understood the strategy, he understood where that vision was supposed to go for Star Wars, but he also knew that he did not have all the skills to be able to do that. And so he had to create this partnership between what he was doing and this Industrial Light and Magic. And actually, I don't believe that digital transformation projects are much different from that. That the business strategy has got to lead. Someone has got to own the vision for where the thing is going. But you need experts, innovators, creators, people who can bring that vision to life. And that's where, the IT function within businesses comes into play. So this success factor is really about identifying that you have a business strategy, but understanding that you have IT leaders who can actually realize that ambition. And so for us, it's about strategic commitment, that at a C-level between the business and the IT function, that there is a strategic commitment from both to make a partnership and to do everything in an agile way. So partnership is absolutely critical. We think that immediate decisions by empowered individuals in both business and the IT part are actually absolutely vital, and you need teams who buy into it, who really understand it and who really want to do it. And where I've seen this done brilliantly is where the KPIs are actually shared between the business leaders and IT leaders. So that you have business leaders who've got KPIs around platform uptime, for example, and you have IT leaders who have commercial targets around revenue, customer acquisition, and NPS. There's tremendous power in all that. So number 3, business strategy has got to lead, but IT has got to bring the magic, and it has to be done very much in partnership. Okay. On to number 4, and this is all about the business case. And when I started doing digital transformation projects or transformation projects of any description, it was all about reducing costs. So by taking transactions and putting them online, you're going to reduce your costs. And in an era where there are inflationary pressures, The economic trajectory globally is very uncertain. That is as relevant a reason for digitizing your route to market as any other, and as has been at any other time. However, it's important that we don't forget that there are other reasons why you might want to do why you might want to digitize your route to market. And actually, the more multifaceted the business case, the more likely you are to have that buy-in that I spoke about in the previous success factor. So we see frequently that it's about customer data and leveraging that so that you have access to better and more customer data than you have ever had before. So, companies can now maybe promote more efficiently. They can do it in a more accurate way. They can enhance the experience, all using new data that they've never had before. The increasing customer satisfaction is definitely one. We know that for every kind of 20% improvement in customer advocacy, revenue is going to increase by about 10%. And Boston Consulting Group and others have done studies that have proven that. Improving your net promoter score for those who measure NPS. If you can do that structurally for 3 or more years, you can grow revenue 2 or 3 times faster than some of your peers. Lowering costs, we've already spoken about. Winning competitive advantage. Creating that essential business tool in a B2B or B2B portal, or creating unique digital experiences and beating the opposition are all possible. And digitizing a route to market should be about finding those angles that you can play, or your customers can play if you're partners here, to win competitive advantage. We very much believe in growing top line revenue. In my direct experience, purely by providing access to a portfolio of products or catalog online, you can probably get 5 to 8% increase in your revenue just by doing that. And by efficient digital marketing and customer experience optimization, you can probably go another 5 or 10% on top of that over time. And that's all available. And sustainability. Ben and I attended a conference in Rome in early October, I think, Ben. So this was the Just Drinks Beer Strategy event. And we listened to, I think, Brooklyn Breweries, Brewdog, and a few more really talk about digitization of the route to market as a major reduction in environmental impact and CO2. So this predominantly talks about movement of stock, bringing it into warehouses, excuse me, being a high CO2, creating high levels of CO2, whereas drop shipping and doing things digitally first, actually dramatically reducing that over time. So success factor 4, definitely about the business case. It's more than about reducing costs. Just a quick reminder that if you want to ask any questions, you can do so at the top of the webinar under Q&A, and we'd be happy to take any questions that you have. Okay, so we're on to success factor number 5. So this is about creating an essential business tool. So I had a conversation a number of years ago with somebody, and we were talking about how in the company I worked in, how you drive adoption, how you get customers to use a digital tool rather than using an analog tool, or maybe speaking to their sales rep. And the phrase that my colleague used at the time was, you can't compel people to do things digitally, but you can make it the destination of choice for their individual transaction, whether that's placing an order, checking their balance, looking for a copy of their statement, making a complaint, whatever it happens to be. And I thought it was a terrific way of actually thinking about this idea of creating an essential business tool, that the digital channel becomes the destination of choice, that the experience in digital actually starts to overtake the experience that you create offline. So for us, it's all about building unique experiences. So understanding your customers' needs in a very deep way to build some kind of platform or digital tool, etc., that's 100% compatible with their needs, but also with yours at the same time. We strongly believe in integrating and not just sort of metaphorically, but integrating sometimes from a data perspective into your client's business processes so that it becomes, totally essential to their day-to-day needs. Integrations don't have to be complicated, they can be simple, but develop some kind of scenario that sort of minimizes your customer's expense and helps them to use that digital tool as the default. We strongly believe in providing content that helps people to build their businesses as well as yours. So many of our customer accounts, they are leaders in their industry, and their customers expect them to lead and provide them with help to make their objectives come true. We also believe in trading and transacting where customers want to be and to meet them there. So it's all about being omni-channel. Certainly, our recommendation is not to force anybody down a digital path from a customer perspective, but as I said earlier on, make it the destination of choice. It should be the place where they want to go. It's the most attractive place to do business with you as a company or with our partners' companies. Personalization has been a trend in digital for a long time. That's not going to go away. Certainly, when you take a blanket market approach to digitizing a route to market, you somehow need to make your customers feel that actually what you're delivering is still a unique experience to them. So personalization is individually experienced, but it's collectively beneficial. And that's something that we would advocate. And finally, in that essential business tool piece, and Ben already made the point about MAC principles, modular, API-based, cloud-hosted, and headless. Look, if you do nothing else, you take nothing else from this slide or even from today, solving customers' real pain points is the way to digitize your route to market, for sure.
So we can use technology itself as a point of competitive advantage, making sure your platform can quickly adapt to business changes, new technologies, competitors, customer demands. And I think the next slide really demonstrates the reverse of that, the pitfalls that you should really try and avoid. I would say almost every week now, we receive an inquiry that essentially speaks to this point, being that as a business matures and grows, as does the number of customizations, integrations, meaning on many platforms, certain independencies between functionalities have been built and compounded over time, meaning future changes become slow and expensive and sometimes no longer possible at all. This is set against an environment of ever-increasing customer demand and perhaps new agile competitors or business models competing for your market share. There are a few businesses that are insulated from external market pressures and innovation, and therefore we see large organizations weekly now essentially outgrowing their existing platforms. From the outside, this often looks like decreased revenue and market share. I suppose what we're saying here is that we invite you to not only build and consider what is required today, but also what the future may look like, and make sure that you're selecting a platform that you're essentially not going to have to re-platform away from, which can be a painful and expensive experience later on.
And the other piece is about, in terms of technology being the competitive advantage, is to really think about going to the cloud. I'm still trying to explain the cloud to my father. He's almost 80 now and is reasonably digitally savvy, but can't wrap his head around cloud computing, storage for photographs and all the rest that goes with it. But anyway, it is here and it will always be with us, I think, from this point forward. But so frequently we're asked about whether we would deliver a solution on premise, some kind of in the box solution, especially for enterprise customers and enterprise companies. And increasingly cloud is really seen, as something that is the way we should be doing things. So it's being used by businesses large and small for their digitization tools for a variety of reasons. And cloud really supports route to market digitization across a number of factors. So first of all, I think the business agility piece is important. So, that traditional on-premise world of installing in a box somewhere, that requires time. You have a hardware component, you have to place it in a data center potentially, and everything that has to be deployed onto that. So responding quickly and being agile is something that you can achieve in cloud because that's not a factor so much. So you can respond to those changing demands and scenarios in a much more agile and flexible way. From a cost perspective, software as a service and cloud-based stuff, now we would regard ourselves as platform as a service, which is maybe a whole topic for a different webinar. But anyway, it means that, you know, from a third-party perspective, it's really more as a kind of pay-as-you-go model, and that you have a bundle of, you know, hardware maintenance, upgrades, license fees, storage, security backups, etc., all part of it. So it definitely over time reduces the level of spend on hosting. For certain, you know, in the cloud means you're free to grow. So as your business grows, the cloud technology grows and expands with you. So related to that, you have this idea of scale on demand. So it could be a kind of a seasonal uptick in business that you see every year, but you don't necessarily want to have the cost of for 12 months. It could be something sudden. It could be, you know, general traffic volatility. It could be Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or just a plain old busy Tuesday. And you can accommodate all of that in cloud in a way that's much more difficult to do offline. Or sorry, rather, I should say on-premise. But you have that capacity that as the business grows, the performance can keep pace with that growth, and performance doesn't drop off because those resources are constantly being added to what you want to do. And finally, of course, from a protection and a security perspective, you have reliable and up-to-date security. The instance that you have is secure. There's less hassle for your own IT department, or for, again, for our partners, for your customers' IT departments. The latest patches and security updates are always available. And it actually reduces your technical debt over time as well, because upgrades are continually added over time. So that is number 6, and 6 is all about how technology can actually be a competitive advantage to you. Okay. Moving on to trying new commercial models. So a digitized route to market, in our experience, is a fantastic way. It's a golden opportunity, I would say, to test and experiment in a very cost-effective way with doing things differently commercially. I don't know if you'd agree with this, Ben, but I reckon probably 50% of the opportunities that we're talking to potential clients about are in the marketplace space now. And these are existing clients who may well have their own e-commerce product working well, but they recognize that the opportunity is there to do something different in the marketplace. So using digital technology and creating marketplace, you can now add new product lines. You can create one-off ad hoc partnerships that you with friendly, with friendly companies. And you can potentially go to market together online in a way that would be very expensive for you to do offline, and provide new opportunities and new experiences. All of that without having to take products, put them into warehouse. We spoke about sustainability earlier on and the cost of that. Without acquisition, without merger, simply create a new business model and go and experiment with that in a way. And once you've proven the value, and remember, success factor 1 is about scaling fast. Once you've proven the value and you can see the KPI that indicates the value is there, then you can follow that value, having proven it online. So marketplaces are even kind of small scale multi-vendor solutions. It doesn't have to be a full 3P marketplace. They're a great way to test out going into a new market, whether a new product might be successful, whether there are companies we might want to collaborate with in certain markets and not in others. And over time, once you've proven the value, that could even lead to a project whereby the physical route to market actually becomes consolidated in some way, all without having to merge companies together. As well as reducing the risk of your route to market, or again, for our partners, your customers' route to market being disrupted, there is the potential there in digital to become an agent of disruption yourself in the market, actually, and increase, let's say, ownership in certain channels and so on. So we've really only got kind of one kind of slide on this, but actually we could probably then do 3 or 4 webinars purely on this one topic, to be honest. But there is definitely an opportunity for it, and it is a success factor in route to market digitization that you can now, using digital, try out new commercial models in a way that you haven't done before. So that's number 7. Number 8, it kind of feels like a kind of a top of the pops countdown, actually, Ben. But we're doing it kind of in reverse order. We should be doing it the other way. But anyway, So number 8, this is probably one of my sort of personal most important things, and this is about simplifying before you digitize. In our experience and in our view, you cannot put multiple years of route to market complexity online. Or perhaps it's more correct to say you can do it, but it's going to cost a lot in terms of time, budget, effort, and so on. And there are far more learned and expert individuals in the world than I on this particular topic. And I will refer and give full credit here to Boston Consulting Group and Eve Mario, who is a complete expert on this topic of removing complexity. And he has a phrase which he uses, and I will refer all of you to various TED Talks and books and publications that he's made. But this phrase that he has, which is simplify before you digitize, is a mantra and a sort of golden rule, if you like. So in several of his books, he has outlined these 6 rules for removing complexity. And I'm just going to focus on 3 actually, which is the complexity piece. And but our strong advice and definitely the success of any route to market digitization will be impacted by the level of complexity that you try to put online. So please consider simplifying before you digitize. So first of all, it's about understanding what your people do. So about actually tracing where are the sources of complexity and determine how the organization is contributing to that complexity by way of their goals, their culture, etc. The second one is to reinforce those individuals, which he calls integrators, whose influence makes a huge difference on the work of other people. So looking at those points of tension where people are doing kind of hard work, where cooperation is not happening, but reinforce those people in the organization who are actually integrating pieces of work from other parts of the business together and to make something new. And the third part is about increasing the total quantity of power. And what he means is increase the level of autonomy at those points where individuals need to escalate to get something done. So give those individuals the power and the autonomy to make a decision in order to remove that complexity. He also talks about rewarding those who cooperate and actually punishing those who don't, showing people what the future will look like if those, both in terms of a simpler world and what that might look like, and also a complex world and why that's why that's less attractive, and also increasing reciprocity, which he means is that idea of setting objectives and getting people to actually work together. But yeah, number 8 is about simplifying before you digitize. Very good advice and a huge success factor in route to market projects for certain. Okay, 9 is about understanding what's in it for everybody. So very simply put, unless you understand the compelling benefits for every stakeholder in that route to market digitization project and the barriers and the blockers for all those people, in our view, that digitization is not going to be successful. I have actually personally experienced a few projects where a lack of understanding about the barriers for some people to undertake this project have actually led the project to fail. So to be very specific about it, I have seen in a route to market digitization project, this is where an e-commerce portal goes live between a supplier and an outlet, that sales reps whose previous job it would have been in order to take the orders and interact with the customer were telling end customers that if the customer engages with this new digital project, that person will lose their job. And that reputational piece, came very close to actually killing off that route to market project from the get-go. So failing to understand the barrier for that sales rep and to account for that and to consider what that's going to look like for them in the future was really impacting the project overall. So other things that I've seen, by not appreciating that, you suddenly start to create channel conflict. For example, if you have wholesalers or distributors, or companies are actually using those wholesalers or distributors to move products and to sell those products to end customers, lack of understanding for why that might be a barrier for those wholesalers and distributors is one reason why it might fail if that supplier is going to the end outlet with a new digital product. And of course, customers will worry that their face time with companies who used to provide a physical service will actually suffer in the event that it's digitized. So customers have barriers and also in relationship to this. So for each of those barriers, you've got to consider what are the benefits. So we spoke earlier on about an essential business tool and creating digital as the default best experience possible for interacting with companies, and we fully subscribe to that. So it's very important to consider those and understand what's in it for everybody. So design first your proposition, and second of all, your communication plan around those benefits and barriers for each of those stakeholders. And finally, or it should be number one, Ben, if we were doing it in Top of the Pops countdown, it is about putting solid foundations in place. Data and a solid back-end architecture is the fuel on which an e-commerce or digitization project will run. So a strong foundation is everything. So you need a minimum data set to provide some kind of digital experience for customers, and that involves a digital catalog, accurate product data, pricing, and accurate customer data. So the availability is important as well, and there should be a level of personalization to the end customer and the distribution channel. So modular e-commerce platforms, like ourselves at Virto Commerce, so we can integrate data from a wide variety of sources inside a customer's IT landscape. So maybe 10 or 15 years ago, if you were to do something like this, you would have to first, probably consolidate all of that data into one place before you go and push it out to customers. But that's no longer the case with most of these modern modular e-commerce systems like Virto Commerce. It should go without saying that if data is rubbish and you publish that to customers, that's the first time they will be exposed to that, and you can expect a reaction to that from your customers. So consider the data that you send out, through these digitization projects, and consider that customers will react if it is not correct. And always, we believe, start with simplified, we spoke about it a minute ago, existing business processes. The advice would be, if something doesn't exist offline, don't try to put it online. One of the most common examples of that is on loyalty schemes. So we frequently talk to prospective customers and they say, well, this is fantastic. We're going to digitize our route to market. We're going to start doing our transactions online, and now we'll be able to do some kind of loyalty scheme with our customers. Frequently we ask, well, what existing loyalty scheme do you have in place, and what do you already know works from a loyalty perspective? And very often people haven't considered that in advance. So the end solution is not, digital as an end solution is not going to suddenly create a loyalty scheme for you. You've got to think about customer loyalty first and then push that out with the data that you already have. And I think Ben showed this diagram earlier on, which just reinforces that point again. Virto Commerce being in the middle of this diagram, and you can see the level of connectivity to and fro across the piece. Okay, that I think is it for number 10, which is all about having solid foundations in place. So we've had a few questions that we got in advance. A few partners and customers asked us if we could cover some topics during the course. We have a few minutes before the end. So one question we had was around how you consider a budget for a route to market digitization project. I'll deal with the budgeting piece, but Ben, I'd like maybe you to talk a little bit about the pricing, at least of the e-commerce piece. In terms of the budgeting, our advice would be on how to determine that budget is to, first of all, market analysis is extraordinarily important. So having a detailed analytic view of the market, the competitors, the trends, the customers, and the segments within that. There is a size of prize effort or exercise that needs to be done to determine whether the effort you might want to engage in is actually going to be worth it in the end. So we would suggest very much before you think about actually how much is it going to cost, you've obviously got to figure out what is the size of the prize and how much we could potentially gain. When it comes to implementation, there are license fees, particularly around e-commerce, to consider, etc. Ben, do you want to cover those?
Yeah, I can do. Of course, there are integration and initial implementation fees, I should say. The idea of Virto Start being that we've enriched the out-of-the-box functionality to shorten that timeline and reduce the cost. But in almost every business, of course, even at the smaller or mid-market end, there is a requirement for customization. So that should be considered, and integration. So typically, I've saw creative ways of businesses funding that, turning it from a sort of capex to an opex ongoing cost over a certain period. But when that is dealt with, the initial cost or investment, it is then really licensing. And licensing tends to take two forms, or two main methods of charging, as most will probably know in e-commerce, given that is GMV based, so based on the value of transactions, or it can also be order-based pricing. There are a few nuances as to which one may work best, and typically a key factor is the average order volume, actually. So we have customers at different ends of the scale, some in manufacturing, and they are selling nuts and bolts, and at the other end we'll have clients in aerospace selling parts for aviation. And of course, on one hand, we have a very high average order value, and a price per order may be a more appropriate and cost-effective method, whereas where it's high volume, you would probably find that GMV would be preferable, and of course there is a tipping point for that. But we're not alone in those two approaches. It is most common in e-commerce, and I should say that we're pretty competitive when it comes to pricing also.
Thanks, Ben. And the other question we had in was around, is there a typical timeline for MVP deployment in some type of route to market digitization project? And the particular reference here is around, again, it's around e-commerce and B2B portals. That kind of sounds like a bit of a how long is a piece of string question, Ben. But do you want to cover that?
Yeah. Yes, it is. It depends on the scope, obviously. But if I could give perhaps a couple of examples, I think the idea of an MVP plus roadmap works very well in many situations. Of course, when it's a replatforming and it's a company in the hundreds of millions, it may not be appropriate to take that approach. In fact, a gradual migration and running side by side is often used. However, for most businesses, perhaps at the mid-market, and particularly looking at something like Virto Start, Dennis, do you have any of our engineers on the call before I start giving times and dates?
There's definitely one engineer in the call, Ben. So
okay. Be careful. Okay. Yeah. Well, if I may say that, I suppose at the very lowest end, if it was a very out of the box and a quick implementation, we pride ourselves in helping sort of speed to revenue and speed to getting onto market. It may be 8 to 10 weeks, or perhaps it's 12 weeks, and we have delivered projects at some scale in that time before. So 3 months, I would say, is a sensible starting point, but it obviously can be more depending on the project, the number of customizations, integrations, and so on.
Very good. Thanks, Ben. And the other question we had in was in relation to marketplace KPIs, etc. I mentioned earlier on when we touched on marketplaces that almost feels like a webinar in and of itself. But in terms of questions in terms of KPIs for marketplaces, just at a very broad level, one thing I would say that's extremely important to consider in the KPI piece is the supplier performance bit. So if you as a marketplace owner or operator have a brand associated with a marketplace, the suppliers and the other vendors who sell in that marketplace are as much a part of the customer experience as you are, and their performance will impact on how your brand is perceived in the market. So one of the areas to seriously spend some time considering is the KPIs for suppliers around time to deliver, the accuracy of stock information, pricing, how quickly they handle customer complaints, and generally some form of customer satisfaction NPS or other specific to those particular vendors. So as well as looking overall at marketplace satisfaction KPI, you have to look at this individual vendor performance as well. So I think, Ben, probably what we'll do is maybe look at a separate webinar entirely on marketplace so that we can go into that in a bit more detail. Okay. That seems to be it. Thanks for the questions. Really appreciate those. Ben and I are open, of course, through LinkedIn or other. If there's any questions that appear in your mind offline or over the Christmas period or the holiday period, we're open to those and we'd love to hear from you. So I don't think there's anything else that we need to share for now. So thanks everybody for attending our webinar today. We hope you found that informative. And we wish you a very good holiday season over the next couple of weeks. We hope to see you on one of these again very soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.